Welcome to Pretty Lies and Alibis. Let's seek the truth and travel the long road to justice together. What you know, Alibis. Welcome to another episode of Pretty Lies and Alibis. I'm Gigi. Good to have you here on this Thursday. We have a lot to cover. We just got finished with closings in Kaitlin Armstrong about an hour ago. I was debating whether or not to wait and do this update on the closings because I kind of feel like the verdict's going to go down right in the middle of it. I don't think this is going to take very long. Some people are worried you may have one person on that jury who sympathizes and thinks Kaitlin was just played around with, but I don't think so. I think maybe they're back there just going, holy crap, can you believe what we just sat through? That's probably what's going on. And they're talking about how Caitlin's 50 Shades of Cray. So let's jump into our music fact of the day. The song Folsom Prison Blues. I thought it was a little appropriate. I think Caitlin's about to have some Texas prison blues. The cheers heard during the live version of Folsom Prison Blues were secretly spliced into the recording. Even though that was recorded live, the hoots and hollers were put in by his team. There you go. Now you know. Closings. We are officially on verdict watch. And I'm keeping an eye on this as I'm doing this episode. Maybe I can make it through this without a verdict. The state obviously started first, and he said in the openings, the defense called Kaitlin a shrinking violet. Not me. I don't call her names. Paragraph 12 says, all your evidence comes from here, and he points to the witness chair. The last thing Mo did on this earth on May 11th, 2022 at 9:15 was scream in terror. They proceeded to play that audio clip. It was horrible. On that tape, 2 shots, a 4 to 5 second pause, and then another shot. He points to Kaitlin and says she stood over Mo after shooting her in the head 2 times and shot her in the heart. Mo was already on the floor. 2 to the head, on the floor, probably already dead, and for good measure. Kaitlin walked up to her and put 1 in her heart. 19 days before trial, she escaped from the sheriff's department. We picked the jury October 30th and started evidence November 1st, the Day of the Dead, a celebration where we celebrate those who have gone before us. See her? She's not just running from the sheriff's department. She's running from you and you and you. He points to different jurors because you are a jury of her peers. She did not want to face you. The offense is murder. He goes on to explain the charge. I think we met our burden. We proved the case. The defense showed you a mountain we had to climb. We climbed it. Never seen so much evidence against one person. He goes on to talk about the defense expert, Steve Aston, who came in and essentially said that all this stuff was junk science. You heard 3.5 hours of evidence from him. He said, I'm not here to contest their experts' findings. Then the prosecutor said, that's 4 hours of our life we will never get back. The defense asked, why did we not exclude every other gun in the world? Nobody else was jealous that her boyfriend was out with Mo. No one else in the world had their black Jeep circling Mo's place. The defense, they're trying to distract you. No one else in the world left the scene of the murder in Caitlin's Jeep, parked in an alley and leaving 2 minutes after shots were heard. These aren't my words. They're facts that came from the witness chair. Did we check every gun in the world? That's a rabbit hole they want you to go down. Let's talk about our friends. One of those calls herself Caitlin's best friend. Kaitlin told Jacqueline about the gun a month after it was purchased. Nicole Mertz said she had never seen Kaitlin that upset before when she found out about Mo and Colin. It stood out to her, and these 2 ladies got on the stand, and one said she was Caitlin's best friend and told you that. Kaitlin called Mo to confront her. Cell phone records show that, and Colin texted her WTF. We all know what that means. When her 2 friends learned that Mo was dead, they called the police and said, you better look at Kaitlin. Kaitlin was shaking. She was so angry when she found out about Mo and Colin. If anyone knows you, it's your best friend. On surveillance, you heard a lot about how the videos did not cover the stairs to Cash's house. People have cameras to protect their own property. A neighbor had cameras on the front and back of her house to watch her own property, not Cash's stairs. You didn't see the Jeep leave because she left south and the cameras were facing east and north. Kaitlin wouldn't have been circling if she knew the cameras were there, but the Jeep GPS also puts her there. They said, you don't know how many black Jeeps are in Austin. The minute Daniel Portnoy takes the GPS out of her Jeep at CarMax, they say, how do you know she was driving the Jeep? At 9:17, 2 minutes after the murder, the track shows that Jeep a few feet in the alley and it starts up. You see Colin in the photo there. If you're on YouTube, it's on the screen. That's where he said he was at the time of the murder. And he was there when Kaitlin drove up after the murder. That same black Jeep they say she wasn't in, Kala was in the garage with the door up when Kaitlin drove up at 9:55. Again, rabbit holes. The witness testified about Caitlin's text messages. They imply someone stole her Jeep and phone, and geolocation put her in the same place as her Jeep and her phone. So whoever stole her phone sent someone a text with her home address at 6:58. Then she texted Colin about getting dinner at 6:25. If she didn't have her phone, whoever stole her Jeep and phone were also interested in the lawsuit and where she lived, if you believe that. No evidence to suggest it was anybody other than Kaitlin. That same phone, she said she had to run errands, and she's texted Colin saying Finny. That means finished, apparently, in Italian. Thank you guys for letting me know. Whoever had her phone had errands to run just like she did. And then he stops and says, it gets more ridiculous as I explain it. It really does. When you look at this in its totality, it's pretty damning. The defense asked the witness 3 to 4 times if GPS was more accurate than CDR. We agree the GPS puts Caitlin's Jeep at the crime scene and returning to her house at 9:50. Caitlin's DNA on the bike puts her at the scene. There are gunshots at 9:15. The Jeep leaves after those shots. The shell casings match her gun. It was personal. She shot her in the heart. DNA tells us who was there. Their expert said it was Kaitlin, but not ours. Our expert was more cautious. For the DNA, 4 transfers, billions of times more likely that it's Caitlin's DNA. You heard of a third unknown person. It could have been somebody from the airlines, a mechanic. Don't fall for the grassy knoll theory. It doesn't explain the DNA on the bike. Look at the evidence. Use your common sense. Steve Aston was confident Caitlin's gun killed Mo. GPS tracks her the whole time. That's undisputed. They show a photo of Mo after winning a race at the Mid-South. Then he says Mo was a 25-year-old prodigy. Everyone shook their head at how good she was. She was new at it. Taken from her parents and her brother at 25. Cash on the front row when I talked to her, call me Cash. Kaitlin killed my friend. Poor thing doesn't even like her own name anymore. That broke my heart, y'all. She pumped her friend's heart over 100 times. You heard that on the 911 call for 10 minutes until first responders got there, not knowing that Mo was likely dead for 45 minutes. Kaitlin flees to Costa Rica. She's on the beaches. She gets plastic surgery while Mo's family is trying to pick up the pieces. Mo was about to set the world on fire. Do me a favor. Do Mo Wilson a favor. I have one thing to say. Get your notepad and draw a line down the middle. Do this for Mo. When they send you down a rabbit hole, write it on the left side. If it's been proven, write it on the right side. We've been here a long time, and when you deliberate, we can get you out of here quickly. It's going to be blank on the left side. Your burden is to follow the law. Justice for Mariah Wilson. Find her guilty and don't let her run like she did 19 days before this trial. The defense is up. Now, the state will be back up for rebuttal at the end. You know, the thing about the defense saying that somebody had Caitlin's Jeep, why have we never heard of anybody that she allowed to borrow her Jeep? And further, if she didn't allow anybody to drive her Jeep, why wasn't there like a stolen car report? They never answered those questions, and I hope this jury is focusing on that. The defense starts and says the state bears the burden of proof. The DA speaks first and last. It's been a privilege to represent Kaitlin. 1 year, 4 months, and 12 days. That's how long Kaitlin has asserted her innocence. She asked for this trial and for you to hear this case. This is a difficult, emotional case, and it could appear to be an easy case. For those 1 year, 4 months, and 12 days, Kaitlin has been trapped in a nightmare of circumstantial evidence. There's a lot of sizzle and not much steak. It's based on assumptions, confirmation bias, and a lack of direct evidence. It starts with jealousy. Jealousy is suspicion of someone's unfaithfulness and a type of insecurity. Colin fostered insecurity and is the poster child for Peter Pan syndrome in Austin. I'll agree with that last sentence. What is the evidence? Kaitlin is a jealous psycho. Colin wasn't honest with Kaitlin about his special friend in Colorado. Kaitlin sent him a photo of her, the friend, in the bra. The implication is that she had been looking at his phone and jealous while he was sneaking off to Colorado. She had the audacity to not like that. Kaitlin called Mo Wilson one time. The text shows she had been texting Colin about the helmet. It probably wasn't a call about the helmet. Probably that Colin is an ass and I live with him. Kaitlin sent Colin a snarky text where on the Instagram story, you see Colin and Mo in the same picture at a race. She texted Colin, give my regards to Mo. That doesn't make a murderer. It's possible Kaitlin viewed Colin's text just as Colin testified he had done the same thing in past relationships. What's that got to do with this? You 12 are a unique species of Travis County. You are a diverse jury of age, race, gender, and experience. Bring that diversity of life experience into your deliberations. Look at this audience. It's diverse. Young people communicate differently. I bet every penny I am worth, most of you have looked at your partner's texts. The younger you are, the more likely you have. Jealousy is a human emotion, a lack of trust in a relationship. Colin said in October of 2021, when he had his short relationship with Mo, that Kaitlin was on dating apps and dating other men. At the race in Arkansas in January of 2022, she didn't seem jealous, and Colin had a long-lasting sexual relationship with a fellow cyclist, Amity, and Kaitlin was not jealous. In fact, her and Amity were friends. Mo wasn't the first cyclist in Colin's life. He hid his relationship with Mo into 2022 because he didn't want to be honest. He doesn't like emotions, only what's important to him. He was breadcrumbing, leaving his options open because he didn't want to get caught. He didn't lie because Kaitlin is a psycho killer. He lied because that's how he approaches life and women. He is a professional cyclist and an amateur liar. What did he say about Kaitlin? He said the relationship was not bad. She wasn't a particularly jealous girlfriend. He had dated others in the past who were more jealous. Who brought up jealousy first? Austin PD Detective Richard Spittler. On May 12th, 12 hours after Mo's murder, he interviewed Colin. Spittler first said the word jealous. What a convenient narrative, a wonderful and easy way to paint her as a woman scorned and to tell his narrative. Whether the facts met the narrative or not, it's a great story. Kaitlin's actions and emotions are normal, but she had to be portrayed as a jealous psycho to meet their narrative. The problem wasn't Mo, it was Colin's behavior. He changed her name in his phone. He deleted Mo's messages on May 11th. Why? He felt he needed an alibi. Why that day? What about that black Jeep? You know where and when that Jeep traveled, and no doubt her phone was on her person from 5:30 to 7:30. There was no evidence her cell phone was in the vicinity of that black Jeep. Was she in the Jeep? Who had access to the black Jeep? That's a question you never answered. Who previously owned a black SUV? Pam Mazak presented a compelling presentation, but they're a lot like swimsuits. What they reveal is interesting, but what they hide is essential. It's easy to see the track logs. He says, ... And if you don't review the data and take it on the word of a PowerPoint animation, it's easy to say that phone was in the car. There's a reason you were shown a PowerPoint. Ask for that when you're back there. Ask for the data. The problem is the presentation. If you look at the data, you were left with an impression that wasn't true. If you look at the data, you were left with an impression that wasn't true on the PowerPoint. Look at the call details compared to the GPS. You will see a lag. Inconclusive evidence the phone was in the black Jeep. Inconclusive evidence the phone was in the black Jeep. You will see particular movements of the Jeep. When the Jeep is traveling, you see weird data in a parking garage, up and down, up and down. While the Jeep is in the parking garage, the phone is inside of a building and not the Jeep. What about the other cars? Colin's car, half a dozen odd vehicles at her disposal. Kaitlin had access to these other cars. Her defense attorney is Rick. And he says, wait, Rick, Colin saw her get out of the Jeep. That's not what he said when he first testified. He said, that's what I believe. He had the weekend. And then on Monday, the details became even fuzzier about his opinion of seeing Kaitlin get out of the Jeep. Yesterday, it was more fuzzy, except he did see her get out of the Jeep. How ironic. Over time, the one thing that pointed the finger away from him and at Kaitlin. Colin with his lack of interest in Kaitlin's life. He said she arrived home mere moments, 6 minutes after killing Mo. He couldn't recall her demeanor that night. It makes no sense. Colin may have had other reasons for saying what he did. Spittler didn't think Colin was truthful and forthcoming. The guns? Colin bought them and told her to train, and she did one time, and she was fine with her demeanor. I asked the witness, did Kaitlin seem murdery? Raise your hands in the gallery if you've ever held or shot a firearm. Did you kill anyone? That's a rabbit hole. What's peculiar is Colin said on the stand that the lock for the guns was his. He had no problem admitting he had a cable lock, but when confronted with the evidence, he had no idea where the black gun lock on Kaitlin's gun came from. When we demonstrated, Colin, who is an engineer major, suddenly has 10 thumbs and doesn't know how it works. Then he says BS, but he says the real thing. I'm just trying to keep it friendly for my advertisers. He wasn't straight with you and he blew smoke to you because he didn't want you to see using a cable lock is no easy feat. He wanted to leave you with the impression, I don't know anything. Kaitlin appears to have held a gun one time and somehow knew how to use and reattach a lock. Her friend said Kaitlin had no knowledge of guns. How did the lock get back on the gun? That makes no sense. Did they check to see if she YouTubed it? Or maybe she's just good at little puzzles. What about the DNA? Kaitlin cannot be excluded as a contributor. Full stop. Handlebars and seat. I'm no DNA expert. They say, I don't know. There can be transfer or lab contamination. They talked about helmets and jackets. Was DNA on there? You will make of that what you will. There are two realities. Number one, Kaitlin was there and that's why her DNA was on Mo's bike. Ding, ding, ding. And then he said blah, blah, blah. Or something wearing gloves and had their hands on the steering wheel of the Jeep Kaitlin was driving. Everyone handled this bike the same way. It was arm day at the gym. He lifts the bike up and he said, this bike is light. This is how you pick it up. They want you to believe Kaitlin held the bike this way, and it makes no sense. What's astounding is on the bar, this was not the area swabbed for DNA. She said this area was more appropriate for latent prints, but could you have swabbed it? Yes. What about the missing DNA analysis? What about swabs taken from the black Jeep? DNA was taken, but never tested. Why not? What if it had shown another unknown profile? That would be inconvenient to the state. Unknown DNA on the bike seat, the handlebars, and on the gun. There's mystery DNA, and the rape kit was not tested. Austin PD did not want a piece of evidence that may point away from Kaitlin. You saw her on the police interrogation. She looked cold and emotionless. Imagine your boyfriend is called for questioning, then you're arrested and interrogated by Katie O'Connor, who may not be the worst homicide detective I've ever seen, but she's in the running. Yikes. Costa Rica. Rick, are you an idiot? Only a guilty person would run. You heard Kaitlin was told she was free to go. When she went to New York, free as a bird. When she booked that ticket and was on a plane, what did Spittler tell you? The murder warrant he had gotten had not been entered into the system the very moment she was on the plane. No way in the world she had any knowledge there was a warrant for her arrest. We know she traveled at a moment's notice, a lot of times for her yoga. Was she scared her boyfriend killed someone, or whoever killed Kaitlin would want to kill her next? Was it related to the vandalism? Fear puts us in fight or flight. She ran away, terrified and fearful, abused and injured. There was an objection, and the state's like, there was no testimony of this. The judge tells the jury to just disregard that statement. He goes on to say, did I miss any big points? It's a simple case. Easy story, but it's wrong. It's based on gender, confirmation bias, and Spittler's first homicide case. Why test the rape kit? Why look into Colin's laptop? One piece of physical evidence removed. Why is Spittler eager to please Colin? Why was it never extracted? Why didn't Spittler try to investigate any other suspect? He goes on to name her exes, and Spittler didn't look into them until July. He did not know they weren't suspects in the beginning of the case. The vandalism, you saw Spittler taking notes. Where are these notes? Where are the photos? Spittler thought so little of it and refused to provide that report to the state, breaking Texas law because it didn't fit the narrative. He didn't test the DNA from the Jeep, but got a warrant based on innuendos and speculation. Spittler said he knew Colin from before. What a world to be treated like Colin Strickland has. Police think Kaitlin committed this crime, but they don't know. She fits their story. That story is so easy because it fits with the misogyny and patriarchy that's rooted in American culture. Humans want answers, not mysteries. If Kaitlin didn't kill Mo, who did? I don't know. What a terrible answer. We demand closure and an explanation. A mystery ruins it. He talks about a case where somebody else was wrongfully convicted and it wasn't discovered till much later. Colin said Kaitlin was a kind and sweet person who showed thoughtfulness and human compassion, a mild and gentle person and not particularly needy, and couldn't imagine her hurting anyone. Never did anything violent in her life, according to Colin. He said she was a softie, but what happened? Anyone could have entered that unlocked apartment. So there we go. We kind of know now the apartment was just unlocked. Why was it unlocked? Mo locked the door to the apartment when she left to go out with Colin, but she didn't lock it when she returned. Was she expecting Colin to come back or someone else? The Austin PD flubbed this case. If you convict Kaitlin and she is eventually exonerated, you will know the basis of it. Untested DNA. There's an objection. The state says that's improper to put pressure on the jury this way, insinuating if they convict her, she's going to be exonerated. Judge didn't like that, tells the jury to disregard. They switch defense attorneys. The next attorney's up. Proof beyond a reasonable doubt is putting the I don't knows you have in a box, putting them aside and pretending they don't exist. You need to think about the I don't knows. They're important. I don't know why Cash's apartment was unlocked, why Mo was clutching a black baseball cap 45 minutes after she got home. I don't know why Colin lied about lying or why Spittler didn't test the rape kit or the test swabs from the black Jeep, and you don't either. The whole point of this trial is the I don't knows, and it's easy to disregard those except Spittler's version of what happens. Your service is a privilege and a duty, not supposed to be easy. At jury selection, we knew you would ask the tough questions. The one thing they all agreed on is DNA, which means a clump of cells was found in the spot they were collected from, and we have a tendency to mythologize DNA from what we see in TV and movies and put it on a pedestal. It's an artifact. What you see, despite what our witnesses tell you in court, is it doesn't confer a crystal ball or a time machine. All DNA is an artifact. That is the scientific position. Ballistics, despite the length of the testimony, the two witnesses agree on a lot of things. Our witness didn't say it's junk science. He worked in the FBI side by side with those examiners for 20 years. Quite the opposite. I disagree with the characterization that our expert agreed with theirs. His testimony would have lasted 5 minutes if he did. He says Steve Aston is entitled to his opinion is subjective science. Their expert wants to go beyond the science and say this gun ejected this shell casing. Our witness recognized the limits of what ballistics can say. He said it's consistent and probably the source of that fired casing. You see the same language in the DNA report. It can't be excluded, possibly the source. Their witness wants to take it a step further and say, we got it. But he says, I don't have the ability to go back to 2015 and talk to Barack Obama and address his concerns about the limitations we can put in that field of science. Aston offered you unqualified, reckless opinions. I can't change that. I can say in 2015, President Obama had these concerns, and experts did too about the claims Mr. Aston has. It's not supported by relevant science. His testimony is consistent with him keeping his job, and the opposite is not what they want to hear. Kaitlin's interview, why did she ask for an attorney? How much trust would she have in the competence and professionalism with the APD after her experience on May 12th, arrested on a silly charge in front of her house, drug into the police department, never read her rights, and they come in and say, oops, sorry, no warrant, just kidding, but stick around for a few minutes. And then, oops, we goofed again, we do have a warrant. Put yourself in her shoes. I'd be looking for game show cameras. Is this real? The day Kaitlin left for New York and Costa Rica, she was free to do so. Easy to say she fled, but the evidence doesn't support that. From a primal place in our brains, when we face fear, what do? Fight or flight. Find a safe place, a place of comfort. Colin did the same thing by going to his dad's house. It's a natural reaction, and we all react differently. Did we think David Harris killed Mo? No, but there was no investigation into him because Spittler had tunnel vision. The state says it's a rabbit hole to ask questions about Spittler and the investigation. Detective Spittler didn't care enough to get the rape kit analyzed for you because he had tunnel vision. Why not look into the criminal mischief at the house? We don't know. He didn't care. Not guilty means we don't know for sure. Not guilty doesn't mean innocent and can mean something different. If you say not guilty, you say we don't know for sure. It's your obligation to come before that door and say we don't know for sure. In this life, we know a lot of things beyond a reasonable doubt. Austin people love salsa, their families. We also know when water falls from the sky, it's raining. We know those things to be true. But that Kaitlin Armstrong is a murderer and she did this, do we know that? Are you certain for sure? They ask. They find her not guilty. The state gets up for their rebuttal and also the last piece of closings. And in the defense's closings, he would say, but Rick, what about this? But Rick, what about that? So the state kind of brings it back to him. But Rick, why is her Jeep in the alley? Why is she driving around Maple Avenue for over an hour? Why did the Jeep start up 2 minutes after the killing? And why does she have a 9mm gun that their expert says could be the gun used to kill Mo Wilson? But Rick, why fly out of the U.S. to fly out of the country where she uses fake names and gets plastic surgery? But Rick, Mo was fully clothed. When was she sexually assaulted? But Rick, Why was Mo on her phone the entire time she was at the apartment? When, in that time frame, was she sexually assaulted? But Rick, Colin was only there to get her for 7 minutes. When did he sexually assault her? But Rick, isn't Colin on video at Poolburger when the Jeep was driving around Caches? But Rick, wasn't Colin in South Austin at the time of the murder? But Rick, the state's DNA expert hadn't heard of a 4-time DNA transfer. Rick, I know the defense has no burden, but didn't you have a DNA expert testify? Why didn't you ask him to test the rape kit or the swabs from the Jeep? There's an objection by the defense. He says, we did ask the state. They opposed and the court denied. The state jumps all over and says, that's incorrect. The court said the defense could test the sexual assault kit. They chose not to. The defense says the DA opposed the testimony, and the state says, let the jury read it for themselves. The judge says to consider the evidence and to disregard. The state says there's no way a judge would not allow them to test the DNA. And I was kind of shocked when he said that, because there's no way a judge would deny that. I mean, that would be an appeal issue. He said that's a flat out lie. Maybe Rick can tell us the vandals who caused damage had access to Colin's laptop, knew Mo, and had access to the Jeep. But Rick, you seem to blame Colin, but you say you don't know who did it. Stick to one reasonable version. No one saw who murdered Mo, but the evidence points to one person. He points and gets close to Kaitlin. I'm going to ask you to be reasonable, use common sense, and look at the evidence. He says reasonable doubt is not 100% proof beyond all doubt. Your job is to examine and discuss the evidence and talk about it. Take your time. When you do that, the evidence will point you in one direction. Kaitlin is responsible for doing this. Talking about Colin's laptop, iPads, and vandalism, there's no talk about the relevance in this case to that. Colin was in South Austin at home. It's a red herring. He goes through the 4 steps of DNA transfer that would have needed to take place in order for Kaitlin's DNA to be on that bike from Transfer DNA, which would be number 1. Kaitlin wears the helmet at some point and coughs in it. Number 2, Mo wears the helmet and gets DNA from Kaitlin coughing on her face or hair. Number 3, Mo touches her face or hair. And number 4, Mo goes into the apartment and puts her hand on the bike and then transfers Kaitlin's DNA. Our expert said he'd never heard of anything like that. A 3-level transfer would have even been unlikely. How about this? Colin drives his motorcycle on a hot day in Austin to the dentist, took his helmet off, parked, opened the doors, sat in the waiting area, touched in the chairs, put his hands on the dentist chair. Why isn't Colin's DNA on that bike? He went back on the bike on a hot day in Austin, sweated in the helmet, I'm sure, and went to get Mo. Then she puts on the helmet, and any DNA that survived of Kaitlin's, her super powerful DNA, Mo puts on the helmet and goes to the pool, takes the helmet off and takes a swim. It gets washed off. She goes to eat, touches a lot of things while there. She puts the helmet on and goes back. And in this strange world, Kaitlin's super DNA is still there. Assume that's true when we have the 4-time transfer the witness had never heard of. They want to contort and twist you to keep your eyes off the evidence. The most logical explanation, as much as this hurts Rick's feelings, he grabs the bike. And he says, even Colin says this is how most bicyclists carry bikes. And Kaitlin has experience on bikes. Not one bit of Colin's DNA is on this bike. And he was the person who wore the helmet to the dentist. It's hot. He's sweating. Mo was in close contact with her arms and legs around him. When Mo puts Kaitlin's DNA on the bike, where is Colin's DNA? You know why? Because Mo didn't touch the bike. Kaitlin did, and she threw it out. Their ballistic expert, he had no problem when he was in the FBI doing that work. Whatever changed his mind about the field is something you should consider. A lot of the most prominent scientists in the country disagree with their expert. January 12th of 22, Kaitlin's at the firing range learning how to shoot her gun. You saw on video, she hits a target 20 or so feet away. Mo was closer than that. Kaitlin buys ammo, and she had the one box that had the same shell casings that were found at the crime scene. You can't make this up. Every time you turn around, it points to her. The detective told you this was personal. 2 shots to the head. Aren't you running at that point? Aren't you getting out of there? Then you have a shot to the heart. That's personal. Mo was up and coming, and that is something Kaitlin could never be. She could never have that connection with Colin. Kaitlin looks up Mo's Strava account on May 9th, 10th, 11th. Kaitlin was not a fangirl of Mo Wilson. Why is Cash's address in the phone and then Kaitlin deletes it? Why, Rick? Why use your sister's passport? If this is a frolic to Costa Rica, why are you there looking for plastic surgery to change your appearance? The aliases and searches for pineapples? Why? That's a consciousness of guilt. She wasn't frolicking. She was a fugitive. She searched herself, wanted for murder. She knew it. Would you say Colin or this mysterious person was in my Jeep? Keep your eye on the ball. And if you do, you will see that's her. Find her guilty. So that was it for closings. The jury got the case at 1:16. It is now currently 3:30. As I end this episode, do I think we'll have a verdict by the end of the day? Yes. I'm sure they all want to discuss this with each other. They've been with each other every day for a couple of weeks. Is there one time to really just talk about the case in its totality for the first time ever and then come to their conclusion and they get lunch? Do I think justice for Mo is going to happen today? Yes, I do. And I will be so happy for her family and friends who can finally put the judicial side of this aside and really focus on healing or trying to come to terms. Maybe that's all they'll be able to do is just accept that she's never coming back. And for what? Kaitlin had any self-respect, she would have just left Colin. Go to Costa Rica, find yourself a little eat, pray, love moment for yourself. But instead, you chose to take a life. All right, guys, I will do a YouTube short when we have a verdict. Not sure if this will be out first or after the verdict, but either way, wanted to wrap this case up. We'll keep you posted. In the meantime, have a good rest of your evening. We'll see you soon.